All right.
How you doing?
All right. You've moved again.
Well, it was getting a bit the sound quality was poor, wasn't it? And so I've had to sort of make adjustments back to where I was. So hopefully I'll rectify that.
I think it's because you were sitting on a sofa and reclining.
I think that's what I was just being far too relaxed, wasn't I, about the whole affair?
Yeah. Yeah. This shouldn't be a relaxing affair, should it?
No, it shouldn't. No, it should be
No.
purgatory.
It should be full of pent up anxiety and something else.
Yeah, and that should come across, shouldn't it, in that
Exactly.
in our recording?
Yeah.
So so yeah, I thought I'd change around, and I've got a new camera as well to make it a little bit clearer.
I
'Cause it,
thought you were a bit clearer.
yeah, it comes across fuzzy on the YouTube.
Yeah. I haven't decided whether seeing you more clearly is a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, it's good for me. I can see myself a bit better.
Yeah. Your fans will be pleased, won't they?
They will, yeah.
Your
Extensive fan
your
club.
fa- your fan will be pleased.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, myself.
So,
Anyway, anyway, yes. Well, I'm glad you could join us eventually.
well, Sunday morning, lot to do, isn't there?
Not really, no.
I had to get some sweet potato wedges in the oven
Did you? Yeah. Well,
for because they got to be in for a long time. Because if you slow cook them, they turn into very nice, nutritious dog treats.
do they?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I admire that. It's not something I get involved in, but
Well, you haven't got
anyway,
a dog.
no, exactly.
Wouldn't be much point, would there?
Not really. So should we go on to what we're going to talk about then?
Yeah. Why don't we do that?
No, it was one of your suggestions. This one, well, I think I interpreted it correctly anyway. But it's something that does often come up in groups. We're just looking at reflection or self-reflection,
Yes,
really.
that's right. Yes, I remember now, and it won't surprise you to learn that I can't remember what it was that prompted it in me, but I think I said reflection, didn't I? Yes, but I think I did mean self reflection. I
Yeah.
didn't. I wasn't talking about a literal reflection, i.e., looking at yourself in the mirror.
Well, no, quite. No, that wouldn't. I suspected that wasn't the case. Um,
Although, just in terms of looking at yourself in the mirror,
mm,
how do you stop the mirror in the bathroom? That's a song, isn't it?
it is, yeah, by the beat.
Yeah. How do you stop the mirror in the bathroom steaming up when you're having a shower,
Just leave the door open a little bit,
or the window?
or the window. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that works, but I had it in my head that there's some other little hack you can do that involves shaving cream, but I don't know what it is. Do you
Sounds
know of that?
No, I don't. I suspect there's someone who say, "Oh, well, you need to just put lemon juice on it or something like that." But yeah, no, I don't get involved in all that.
Right. Okay. I just
Make sure
thought.
you shave first before you get into the shower, and then you don't really need to look in the mirror afterwards.
Yeah, that's sensible.
Hmm.
I like your thinking. Oh,
Yeah,
good. I'm glad I brought it up because that's been helpful.
that's it.
Yeah.
Well, glad to be of assistance.
Anyway,
Uh,
back to self-reflection.
yeah, I mean, we get these periods in recovery, and this is why we talk about it in groups quite a lot because we get these periods in recovery. Not everyone, but a lot of people get them where you get a point where it's a little bit flat. I know we've talked in the past about in the early stages of recovery, you get this sort of like this pink fluffy cloud where everything looks rosy. Then you get this sort of a period where things go a bit flat.
Well, like you
Uh,
plateau,
You do plateau. We talk about it being a bit of a base camp, if you like.
right?
You're part way up the mountain. It's time to just sit and have a look around, have a look down, look at the view, see where you've come from, and then perhaps a glance upward and look where you're going to go next. Um, that's just to visualize it effectively. But just before we start, though,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, there's a couple of little stories that made me chuckle a little bit this week.
Right. Okay.
All of them. The first one was there's a woman in Enfield who found the face of Shrek in her curry. Now, I don't know if you saw that or not.
No, I didn't. No.
It was like there's like this green curry. I'll put a picture up on the
A
Facebook
Thai
page.
green curry, presumably.
Well, it was something else than that. It looked like a thicker version of that, but yeah, it was a green.
Uh,
And she poured it out, and the lumps of chicken and that in it, and as it settled, it looked like the face of Shrek. Which I thought
and presumably it had a picture.
it did have a picture. Yeah, you couldn't
Did it
just
look
say.
like Shrek?
Yeah, it did. It did. And we're used to sort of Jesus turning up on toast, aren't we? And in various places, but
Yeah.
I'd never heard of Shrek turning up.
not in a curry.
Not in a,
Although,
not in a curry.
I would suggest that Jesus turning up on your toast is more random than Shrek turning up in your curry because, and I'm not suggesting that she did this. I wouldn't want to suggest that the woman in Enfield is in any way a cheat or a liar.
No, no.
But it would be possible, wouldn't it, to rearrange the pieces in a green curry to make it look like Shrek? I mean, someone with more artistic ability than me could probably do that. I mean, you, for instance, would probably be able to do that.
You could. I've never tried it to arrange curry into an artistic form, but I suspect it could be done. But she seemed quite genuine when I was reading the article. She poured it out. It was a takeaway, poured it out on a plate, and there it was, looking back at her. But
maybe next time you have one of those vegan recipes from Tesco's, one of those ready-made meals that you get. Perhaps you could see if you could rearrange the pieces to make it look like Bruce Forsyth.
I can have a go.
Have a go, and because then we could probably get you in the paper, couldn't we?
We could, yeah. I've poured it out, and look, Bruce has turned up.
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, yeah. That's you set me that as a challenge, aren't you? Now, I'll see what I can do, mate. See what I can do. Okay. It just reminded me Shrek though. Do you remember England football fans used to take little Shrek dolls along and put Wayne Rooney shirts on them, which I thought was really cruel. I mean, but
you can see a resemblance though.
You can, yeah.
You can see a resemblance of Wayne Rooney. I don't know what it is. I think it's the sort of shape of his head and his ears, I think.
Yeah.
We've all got to look like somebody, haven't we?
Well, I suppose
somebody's got to look like Shrek, haven't they?
Well, they have. But the second story that made me laugh a little bit was about this hermit fella in Iran who hadn't washed for 67 years. Imagine that. And they persuaded him to have a shower, and he died shortly afterwards. Now, I'm not connected the two. Not really connected the two. He was 94, so he's probably due. He's probably overdue, if anything. So yeah. But
if you don't wash for 67 years, though, I mean, I don't know, but I imagine it must get to the point, as you were talking about before in recovery, that you must plateau with your dirtiness.
Yeah, you must do.
There must be a point at which you can't really get any grubbier, isn't there? Surely, I suppose layers of dirt can build up on you. Can't
I suppose so. There was a little picture of him, and he did look very grubby, I've got to say. But I remember like coming home from festivals, coming home from Reading after having a week of not washing, and my mum would banish us off to the bathroom and chuck all their clothes in the incinerator virtually, just to try and get the filth off of us.
That's one of the nicest things about getting dirty is getting clean, isn't it?
It is.
So in a way, he kind of deprived himself of that luxury for 67 years, hadn't he?
Yeah. He was a hermit. He didn't fancy all that. He dropped out of society.
I bet he was a long time in the shower though when they convinced him to have one, don't you?
You'd imagine it. You had to sandpaper him down, probably.
That's right. There's no jump in the shower quickly, is there? After 67 years?
No.
Yeah, interesting.
Anyway, subject matter.
Are you going back to plateauing at any point?
Yeah, I am sort of. Yes.
Oh, good. Because
in fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that straight away. Really. Well, I remember one of our very earliest chats when we used to have a meet-up where we used to have a bit of a briefing session with you before I used to rush off to my groups.
Yeah,
especially when I started in Pret-a-Manger, which I always found really useful, especially when I was starting to facilitate groups, needed a bit of input. And I remember you telling me about the fertile void. Remember us having this discussion, which I often used after that. And that's an expression which is used in Gestalt theory, isn't it, to describe a phase where nothing particular stands out. And I know I sort of did a bit of research on that. And there's an awful lot in there in fertile void, really. I think I don't want to appear sort of reductionist on an important theory, but one of the aspects in that when I was looking at it is this it gives you time for reflection and self-reflection and looking back. In recovery, these periods come along quite naturally. As I say, you get plateaus, and it's really weird that it sort of comes at the 3-month period of sobriety is a really common one. And then you get another one at 6 months, another one about a year. And it's weird that over the years that I've been in recovery, how often that sort of template comes up. You know, people say, "Oh, I'm feeling a bit flat, a bit strange," and you say, "Well, you talk about how long they've been in recovery," and sure enough, it seems to sort of tessellate with one of those milestones.
Nice word. Don't think that word's been used on the pod
I
before.
don't think so, but
Well,
I
I
quite
suppose there's
like it.
another way you could think about it, other than using the fertile void, and that is it is liminal space, isn't it? Which is the space that between. It's like the traveling between one
Yeah,
part and the next part.
yeah,
So that sort of plateauing doesn't obviously just exist in recovery. It exists in so many
no,
other places. The two that spring to mind are, anyone who's ever tried to lose weight will recognize that. If you are particularly overweight, as I was as a child, as you'll remember,
I do.
to attract the appellation Pillsbury Doughboy.
Well, Shrek wasn't around then, so we couldn't
No,
use it.
I don't think I'd have been called Shrek anyway. Then
No,
he wouldn't. He was, but well, I suppose he would have been fat enough, wouldn't he? Anyway, if you try to lose weight and you're particularly overweight, there'll be that sort of delightful period at the start where it seems to be dropping off you,
yeah,
but then you'll quickly reach a point where it becomes a lot harder. So that's one way. And then the other way, which I suppose most of us would recognize, is when you're trying to learn something. Sometimes when you're kind of new to something, you'll start to pick it up and you'll get the hang of it, and it'll feel like, oh yeah, this is all coming together. But then inevitably you'll kind of reach a point where you think, actually, this is quite difficult now. Don't seem to be making much progress. I don't seem to be going forward very fast. I mean, learning a musical instrument is really like that.
yeah.
You can get so far, but then if you want to get any further, it's proper hard grind.
Yeah, you're playing snooker, something like that.
Playing snooker, as we used to do, didn't we?
We did.
After the pub quite regularly.
We did, and you get to a certain level in that of skill, and then you don't really progress. After that, you'd need input, really.
Correct. I mean, neither of us really even reached that very minimal level of skill, did we?
No, we didn't. No, it was a late drink, basically, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah,
it was.
You encouraged me. It's all your fault. But you're right. It doesn't just. It's not just people in addiction. It's just that it in recovery it presents itself. It presents itself at these certain periods, and then you come across it and you need to address it. But when I'm looking at the research on this, on self-reflection, it suggests that we should, more actively make time for these periods. Something we should really embrace. And I wanted to look at in the research is why we should do this.
Okay.
And I came across quite an interesting article, which even the headline sort of sums it up to a certain extent. It was called "Why You Should Make Time for Self-Reflection." In brackets, even if you hate doing it, close brackets.
That does what it says on the tin.
It does on that one, doesn't it? And this one was this particular article I was looking at. It was in the Harvard Business Review.
Oh yeah.
So it was a bit corporate. So I only looked at a little bit of that because I went elsewhere. But the lady that wrote that, a lady called Jennifer Porter, she summed up this as, and I'll quote her verbatim on this: reflection gives the brain an opportunity to pause amidst the chaos, untangle and sort through observations and experiences, consider multiple interpretations, and create meaning. This meaning becomes learning, which can then inform future mindsets and actions. So I thought, although she was looking at it from a corporate point of view, when they're sort of training people to get the best out of them in the corporate world, I think that was quite a good summing up, really good synopsis of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I took from there, really, because the rest of it was it reminded me a little bit of being back in that world. So I went onto a website called Mindful Zen. Now, Mindful Zen, it looked at the benefits of self-reflection, and so it was a little bit more us, really. So I just wanted to go through some of these benefits and see what you thought about them, really. So there's a number of points I just wanted to discuss with you.
Okay.
The first one was knowing your core values. So, the deeper you go into your own self, you're more easily, or it's more easy to identify your core personal values. Because I think sometimes I think we do lose sight of that. We do need time to reflect, don't we, just to see what it's all about, really.
Yeah, I suspect if you could probably ask a lot of people what their core values were, and I think most people will probably find that quite difficult to answer.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of at a deeper level of consciousness than other things that are more easily, identified and related to. So, in a way, Core values. I think actually self-reflection, you have to do quite a lot of it, and you have to be quite practiced at it before you
Yeah.
can even get to that sort of identification of core values,
I,
really.
I think I think you're right, and this, although they're in no particular order, I think some of these points are more important than others, and
Mm,
some are really better off on a prescriptive timeline.
mm.
The second point was understanding your purpose and potential, which is a similar sort of thing.
Well, I
But
think that feels to me as if that's more kind of pragmatic.
yeah,
To identify what was your purpose and what was the other thing.
which is purpose and potential. I think it's looking
Yeah.
at more of making you conscious of your strengths and your weaknesses.
Well, I think purpose and potential. Oh, there's my friend the magpie's back. Just outside the
Saluting.
window. All right. Yeah. Um, I think purpose and potential is very important in recovery.
Yes,
And I don't know, you may be coming on to talk about this anyway, but it seems to me that one of the things that perhaps makes self-reflection quite difficult for people, certainly early in recovery, is that addiction is you can almost kind of see it as self-deflection
yeah,
in addiction, because you're behaving in a way that prevents you from reflecting. You don't want to think about what you're feeling. You don't want to look at yourself, and so that kind of that change from avoiding all of that to encouraging yourself to do it can be quite difficult. And I think we'll probably come on to some of the reasons why that's difficult later.
yeah,
But
yeah.
purpose and potential, I would have thought for people in recovery is really important.
It is an important aspect of it, isn't it?
Well,
Um,
even if it's just as much as, or if it just goes as far as, what is my life without drink or drugs going to look like? How can I build that into something that feels as if it's sustainable and nourishing,
it
which is
is,
pretty
but
important.
you are right because at that point, certainly early recovery, you have no real vision. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what you're going to turn into. You can't remember life without drink and drugs. But it gives you a good opportunity to look back or to start to work out what you can contribute.
Yeah,
What your strengths are, because we've spent so long so we're looking at our weaknesses
writing
and
yourself off.
yeah, exactly. So that it is that a period of self reflection
Yeah.
is good in that respect to try and identify those areas. But
There's also sorry to interrupt, but
no,
there's
go
also
on.
something else that I think is really important, which is if you've been in active addiction, you're almost certain to have been defined by other people. So your sense of yourself will be defined the way that other people see you. I don't
Absolutely.
know, selfish, um, no self-control, whatever it is. And so the importance of self-reflection then in recovery is that you're I always use the phrase taking back control there. I'm going to sound like a conservative MP. But what you're doing is you're kind of changing that sense of yourself, which has been created by somebody else. You're moving it away from that and saying, no, I'm going to take control of that now. I'm going to think about who I am and why I have that opinion, regardless of what other people might want to say about me, or regardless of the other, the opinions or pejorative opinions that other people might have of me. So I think that's one of the other reasons why it's really important.
It is, and I think it gives you the opportunity to look at or just look at the bigger picture. Again, I don't really like to use that term, but I think we can get sidetracked by some of the small details, the nuances, and I think we're better able to put things in perspective
Mm-hmm.
when you do it when you embrace self reflection. And well, it was only back in June we did an episode on putting things in perspective. That was season 6, episode 4. If anyone wants to relook at that one,
Have you
but
got it on a spreadsheet?
of course.
Yeah.
Another one that came up was facing your fears,
Yeah.
um, recognizing your fears for what they are, and seeing what blessings are on the one side of those fears. Once you overcome those fears, what's likely to happen, or what you can potentially get out of it. I hadn't really thought about that. Have you got any thoughts on that? Whether you can use periods of self reflection to look at, to face your fears and to do something about them?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you said it, I immediately started thinking about how that would play out when you're in recovery, and I suppose it, it goes back to something we were just talking about, which is I imagine one of the fears that people have when they're early in recovery is, how am I going to live without drink or drugs?
Yeah. That,
So, so that kind of sense of it's a kind of existential fear, isn't it? How am I going to exist without that substance in my life?
mm,
So, in that sense, self reflection gives you an opportunity to, because you can't avoid that fear, can you? If you're going to be in recovery,
no,
you have
you
got to
can't.
face that fear because there's no alternative. So self-reflection gives you an opportunity to kind of tolerate the discomfort of thinking about what that might mean for you and kind of forcing you through it to some sense of, well, what might it look like? What do I want it to look like? So I think that's it's a good point. Yeah.
It
You
is.
know,
It is very relevant. So I don't think I've met anyone that's come into recovery that doesn't have that fear, because it's been such a massive part of our lives for so long that to be without it is very scary. But I think also, moving on, better decision making was the next point. So the more self aware you are, the less distracted you are by other people's opinions. I think we touched on that earlier on, and all the other sort of mental clutter, the shit FM as we call it, that goes on in your head all the time, and that when that's playing.
but you're also getting yourself aligned, aren't you? Because if you're
Yeah,
in terms of decision making, I suppose it's related to that point you were making about values, but in terms of making good decisions, you need to have everything lined up. You need to know what it is you want from your life. So you have to have a sense of your own potential and purpose. And if you've got a sense of your potential and purpose, that helps you to navigate a direction. And then if you know what your direction is, your decisions naturally become easier. So you think, well, does this decision take me towards where I'm trying to get to, or doesn't it? Because if it does, it's probably a good decision. If it doesn't, then, I might need to rethink it. So I think all those things kind of start to hang together when it comes to making decisions.
yeah, you're right. You're right, and that also spills over into the next point, really, about better relationships. Because we talked about it's very difficult to get other people to love you if you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
And I think through self reflection, the better you know yourself, the better able you to see to see the connections between you and other people, aren't you? And it's sort of how do I put it? I think it's sort of almost like your emotional intelligence grows, and along with your self awareness.
Yeah. Self awareness is definitely important in terms of relationships because the more conscious you are of yourself, um, the less likely you are to lose your sense of self in a relationship with someone else. So theoretically, the strongest relationships are going to be the relationships between two people who are self aware.
Yeah,
Because when you're not self aware, you're much more likely to put down something that's going on in you or you're going to give ownership of it to someone else. You say, well, it's your fault. If you haven't really considered, well, what part am I playing in this? Where is this coming from? So, as I say, theoretically, if both people in a relationship are self-aware or self-reflective, there's more chance of that relationship thriving.
I agree. I agree. And the last point before I wanted to go on to, there's a little bit I looked up on tips on self reflection and how to do it effectively. The last point was less stress and anxiety. If you can do this on a regular basis and get used to it, and which leads to better sleep. And sleep is something which always comes up in groups about the early stages of recovery, how tricky it is. Our mind or our bodies as well have been used to sort of a drink collapse scenario, no proper sleep going on, and it's erratic. So it
Mm-hmm.
takes a while for that to come back together. And it's one of the real benefits is when your recovery takes off that you start to sleep, you get a sleep pattern back. I remember that being quite a joyful feeling where you could
Mm,
go to bed at night and sleep and then wake up in the morning.
mm.
When you're in the madness, that night and day have no difference. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because sleep is restorative in so many different ways. But I think that point about it reducing stress and anxiety is important, but it's also important to remember that self-reflection shouldn't be connected or shouldn't be confused with self-criticism. And I think sometimes it is. I think sometimes if we
Yeah,
become too kind of introspective, we can be, well, two things happen if you're too introspective. One, you kind of lose connection with the rest of the world, which is actually part of the benefit potentially of
Mm,
self-reflection. You know, it
mm.
makes it easier for you to connect with the world. But if you're obsessed with it and that's all you ever do, then of course you just cut yourself off from the rest of the world. And the other thing that can happen, you know, if you don't have a positive self view, is your self reflection can turn into self criticism, and you can be kind of constantly down on yourself, where your self reflection is negative and destructive rather than giving you all those benefits that we've just been talking about.
That's quite a thin dividing line, isn't it? It's quite tough to get it right at that stage, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I think if you're sort of hypercritical of yourself, it it's probably an indication that there are you know, there are other voices that are contributing to your self view. You know, because when someone's really relentlessly self critical, where's that come from? You weren't born like that. Somewhere you've learned that. And so if you're in recovery, if you're sort of new in recovery, there will be something that kind of led you into drink in the first place. And so that sort of very critical self, you know, might come from the shame or the guilt that you feel from all of your years in active addiction. But it's important to be able to separate what other people might think of you from the kind of core of yourself. You know, there's a kind of, I don't know, it's like a, I suppose in recovery, it's like a beginner's mindset. You've got to start again. I've got to start again. There's a good me in here, and that's the self that I want to reflect on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. But I know that it's difficult. It's the same with sort of meditation, which is part of one of the tips of self-reflection, really, or how to do it, or how to get involved in self-reflection. Um, it's tricky, which is why that headline from earlier on, you know, even if you hate doing it, I felt that was quite important, because I think you've got to take positive steps if you want to do this self-reflection and get the benefits of it. And one of the tips was to schedule it into a daily routine. Now, and they said obviously it's probably best not just before bedtime, because I think you might go to bed then with your head full of stuff. But if you can, I mean, I don't know how long you should spend doing it. That's probably down to the individual. But I think if you get used to it and do it on a daily basis, so you give you time to reflect about what's happened and to challenge yourself sometimes with some of the more difficult questions. Um, because I think we can easily kid ourselves and say everything's okay, which is what we do in addiction all the time when we're in active addiction. Um, you think, oh, it's all right, I can handle it. I'll sort this out another time. I don't think I've really got a problem.
Mm. Which is
So
not self-reflection, is it?
no, not at that
That's
point.
self-deflection.
It is, yeah, it is. So it is moving away from that and getting to this point. We have a bit of a routine each day. We do give time to it. Um,
Yeah. I
we,
think it's kind of worth asking yourself also, if you know, going back to that headline of the article that you read,
yeah,
if you are someone who hates self-reflection, why? It's worth asking yourself why. You know, do you hate self-reflection because you don't feel comfortable with yourself, or you fear your own thoughts, or you know, what is it? I I, I think it. Yes, of course, it's important to do, but if you do avoid it, I think part of being able to do it consistently is probably going to be wrapped up in understanding why you avoid it and trying
yeah.
to, because that in itself is some self-reflection. Oh, I don't like self-reflection. Let me self-reflect on that. I think that's kind of an important part of it.
It is a good point. And when you're looking at the other tips, some of our old favourites come up, like start small and journaling, um,
Journaling's great. Yep.
which is both. I think we speak about those two aspects across so many different subject matter, don't we?
We do. You know, I think the other thing that springs to mind is the, you know, conversation we always have about gratitude.
Yeah,
You know, gratitude is something that becomes easier the more you do it. It's like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more natural it becomes.
yeah,
And I think self-reflection is like this, because I was kind of thinking about the ways in which I self-reflect, and you know, I do it when I'm walking.
right, yeah,
So, you know, when I see someone out walking their dogs and they've got their headphones in, I think, oh, what a waste.
yeah. I
You know,
think
you're
that.
listening to stuff. This is time where you could be kind of just being with yourself. The other way that a lot of people struggle to do it is if you're at home on your own. Some people, if they're at home on their own, they need to have sound. They need to have the radio on or the television on, or music or whatever. You know, try being in silence, because it kind of forces self-reflection.
Yeah,
That whole being alone with your own thoughts, I think is something. And then, as you say, journaling, any type of writing. The example that I thought of when I was thinking of that was when you sit down to do your research for this sort of stuff, that's
Mm.
self-reflection, because what you're doing is you're absorbing information and then you're thinking about how it relates to you and people you know. That's the essence of self-reflection. So,
Yeah.
and when we're having these conversations, in a way, that's self-reflection, because you'll say things that will make me think, oh, that's interesting, and something will go on in my head, and the same thing will happen to you. So I think if you kind of consider self-reflection as something that's broad, that's happening all the time, it almost becomes easier to fit it in than if you think it's something you've got to kind of specifically make time for.
That is true. That is true. But talking about, you do a bit of self-reflecting when you're out walking, because one of the tips was to spend more time in nature. Now, I remember, the walks during COVID, that was a great time for self-reflecting at that point. And it's something I've tried to carry on, because I think there was certain times of, certainly when the sun was out and you're out in the countryside, especially there's no cars on the road. So it was very quiet. And you get this natural sense of euphoria, but
Hmm.
you do reflect at that point. You do look at the points you're grateful for, in a world at that point which was unsettled. There was
Mm,
chaos,
mm.
and so it was to having that break and to doing a bit of self-reflecting was great.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like it's nice to go out walking with someone else, but it's also good for for you to do it on your own, because
Mm,
that's obviously it gives you more opportunity just to be on your own with your own thoughts.
it does, and I think if I do feel a bit stressy, going out and walking is a great way of dealing with it. It's a little bit of exercise, but it does give you time to think these things through.
Mm.
And again, I find it really sad when I see people with headphones on or earphones in, that they aren't listening to what's going on around them, or not. They're being fed stuff into them. It's a bit like sitting in front of the telly. You sort of almost veg out, don't you?
Yeah,
When
it's
you've got
very
that
it's
going on.
very kind of passive, isn't it? I feed something into my thoughts so that I don't have to generate them myself. Now, obviously, sometimes it's nice to go walking and listen to a podcast or whatever. But I think what
Mhm.
we're saying is, if you do that, if you do walk regularly and you're always listening to something, try going out not listening to something.
Yeah,
See
yeah.
what happens. See if it's uncomfortable, even if you come back and you think, crikey, I didn't like that. You've learned something about yourself, haven't you? That is self-reflection.
Very true. And the last couple of points, which is meditation, we touched on it earlier on, which is a quite a good way of doing it. And you mentioned the word liminal earlier on, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's just that it's one of the meditation programs on my VR headset. It's called
Is
Liminal.
it? Is it?
Yeah, and it's that is great for that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like a transitionary space, isn't it? Liminal
yeah,
space.
it is. And the last point it came up was getting counselling. So I don't know how you feel about that, but from what you've said today, if someone hears that when they're in front of you, there's a lot in there, isn't there? So counselling could well be a way of perhaps teaching you the methods of self-reflecting, or going through why you should do it and the benefits of it.
I think one of the ways in which counselling is really helpful for self-reflection is that there aren't any answers in counselling. You're encouraged constantly to find your own,
Yeah.
and you can't find answers unless you self-reflect.
Right.
So,
Okay.
one of the so if you go to therapy and you're kind of going around in a circle all the time and nothing seems to be changing, then it's not your therapist's fault, because your
Oh, I
therapist can't
see.
well, your therapist can't change things for you. Your therapist essentially exists to kind of reflect stuff back to you.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so there might be some kind of guidance there, but you were talking about it earlier. Self-reflection is really what helps us to find answers to things and chart our path somewhere. So I think what counselling does, what therapy does, is it offers you the conditions um, under which you can kind of do that work. I don't want to overpromise for therapy.
Well, no, quite. But but it's a good point. It is a good point. I haven't really thought about it like that. But that's about it, really. Unless there's anything else you wanted to add on that on self-reflection as a whole before we go on to our gratitude list.
I don't think I do. I think the only thing I don't know if we've necessarily directly touched on, and that is, we always think about mistakes as something we have to learn from. So we all make mistakes, obviously we do. But it's worth considering that you can't ever learn from a mistake without self-reflection.
Okay.
You don't really think about, right, why did I make that mistake? What's going on there? How did that come about? What would I want to do differently? How did I approach that may not have been optimal? That's self-reflection. So learning from mistakes is not automatic, and it's one of the reasons why people make the same mistake over and over and over again, because they're not really self-reflecting. They're not thinking about, why have I put myself in that situation and how can I avoid it next time? So if we assume that most people would be interested in making fewer mistakes in their lives, self-reflection is definitely, one way in which you will do that.
Well, it's really important when, as you were talking there, it just came to mind about people that have that lapse or relapse,
Yeah.
and on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, the mistake is picking up the drink, but it would take then a bit of self reflection, wouldn't it, to understand why you've done that and to try and avoid that in the future.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it's an example probably of where there's a necessity for, if you're someone who keeps lapsing, there's a necessity, probably you need to go deeper in your self-reflection,
mm,
because your self-reflection at the level that you're doing it clearly isn't working. It's like you're not going far enough. You're not understanding this,
yeah,
assuming that you do actually want to sustain your
get
recovery.
better. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't want to get better, then
Mm.
maybe you need to do some self-reflection on that.
As to
What is
why
it
you don't.
about your sense of yourself? Why are you not worth it? Why are you not valuable enough to get better?
That's the point. That is a great point. I think it is a sense of self value which can hold us back
Yeah, which
an awful
requires
lot in recovery.
self-reflection, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's not someone else. It doesn't matter whether or not someone else is telling you you're not worth getting better. It's nothing to do with them. It's about you. And if you don't feel like you're worth it, then self-reflect on that.
good work. Well, I think that's a nice place to wrap it up before we go on to our gratitude list. Then, in that case,
Okay.
if you're okay with that,
I'm fine with that. I think it's your turn this week.
I think it is. It's a little bit strange this, but on my gratitude list this week is the gratitude of others. Um,
Okay.
which is just to illustrate it. It was nice. Like the last week or so, I've been working at someone's place, and at the end of it, they were very grateful for what I'd done, even though they're paying me. So effectively, I was discharging my responsibility. They're very grateful and put it on Facebook, saying I'm really grateful. So that was so. Thanks to Sophie for that, for putting that on there, and
I
yeah, it
think I
made me.
saw that picture.
I was quite grateful. It was a
Yeah.
very bad picture of me, but the actual room was very nice. So I
Yeah,
was great.
I don't think you were smiling in it.
No, I wasn't. No, no. But so it's quite nice. I was grateful for that. I was
Mm.
grateful for someone else's gratitude.
Yeah. And when I saw that picture, I thought your overalls could do with a clean.
Yeah, well, I think I ought to get some new ones. Really, aren't they? You can't. They're difficult to clean with when they've got painting on them for over a number of months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do treat myself to a new pair from time to time, and yeah, they are overdue.
Yeah. Well,
Overdue.
you should perhaps do a little bit of self-reflection on that.
I will. I will. I also reflect on the fact that Sophie bought me up like sausage baguettes and bacon sandwiches and stuff in the morning, which again
Really?
I was so grateful for. Yeah,
That's nice.
little
You
touches like that.
didn't get that when you worked here.
No, I didn't. No, well, you weren't even there. You was off on holiday, weren't you, last time? You just
Oh,
buggered off, left me to it.
yeah. Well, that's fair enough, isn't it? Really.
Oh no, that might have been the time before you
That
did
was
that.
the
But
time
anyway,
before. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So what
Very
about
good.
yourself? What about yourself, mate?
Well, I feel this week I'm feeling grateful for living close to the seaside.
Okay, yeah. We're in Kent. We've got
You're never
coastal
far from
around
a
us.
beach, are you? You're never far from a
No,
beach. Yesterday, we took the dogs to Canberra. As you know, I
lovely.
like a bit of
You
Canberra
do
down there.
that, don't you?
And it was lovely. I was quite busy because it was such a nice day yesterday, but it's so nice to be close to such a kind of um a different landscape from the one that we kind of live in every day. And I think sometimes it's easy to take that for granted. And actually it's another example of how sometimes you can take yourself out of your natural surroundings somewhere else, and that will give you a completely different opportunity for self-reflection, because your kind of environment will have an impact on the way that you think about things and your ability to self-reflect. So I feel grateful for that this week.
Well, that's good. I mean, it goes back to that, the point we was making about spending more time in nature. But I think sitting by the sea is probably the easiest way to get yourself in the mood for self-reflecting.
Yeah, although self-reflection becomes more difficult when dogs are kicking sand in your cheese and celery sandwiches.
Well, yeah, we won't mention that with the actual sandwich, yeah, but yeah, getting sand kicked by dogs into, yeah, that's gonna take you out of that of the mindset, isn't it?
Yeah. And then
It's good.
obviously slightly misjudging waves and getting very, very wet, that sort of hasn't. Well, I suppose that's an opportunity to self-reflect on the mistake that you made.
You have, and you can learn from that. Kind of just stand a little bit further back next
Exactly.
time,
Or not crouch so much.
not crouch so much, or just check the tide timetable before you set out.
I did check the tide timetable, but I wasn't really conscious enough of the size of the waves.
No, that is a good point, 'cause I think we are quite blessed having all the different. You can go along the coast, and there's each different little resort or place offers quite a variety of experiences, isn't it?
It does. Very nice.
But going on to daysoftheyear.com,
Right.
not a great deal going on here, but
There must be something Halloween. This
well, there
isn't there?
was, but yeah, but I didn't really want to look at that.
Oh.
There was one which was strangely called "Create a Great Funeral Day."
Oh.
Yeah, no, it was really talking about your death wish list, which I know you and I have talked about in the past.
I'm all on board with that. Creating
Wish
death plans. I think that's a thoroughly good idea.
death plans, perhaps death wish list is probably the wrong thing. I'm thinking like an Amazon wish list, which is not really right, is it, in this
Oh, what would
context?
you have on your death wish list? A coffin, I'd have.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
you
you?
got to have one of those. Yeah,
Have a coffin. Well, you don't have to, do you?
no,
What else would you have in your death wish list?
like the music you want at your funeral.
Some mourners would be nice,
Some
wouldn't it?
mourners. Yeah. I think rope a few of those in just to make you look popular.
What do you think is the minimum number of mourners that you need at your funeral,
Oh,
to avoid being seen as someone deeply unpopular?
I don't really care. I'm dead. I don't really. That doesn't really matter, does it? But
Yeah, no,
suppose.
but you or I are going to go first.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's unlikely that we'll die on the same day, which means
Very.
that one of us will go to the other one's funeral, and we'll then
Yeah,
be able to have a little count up, won't we?
yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, there'll definitely be more people at your funeral than at mine.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, because you're much more sociable than me.
Yeah, there'll probably just be a handful of of people that are there for the sandwiches afterwards, won't there? For the wake.
Yeah,
Uh,
or a wake. I suppose you could have a wake on your wish list. I reckon if
well,
you've got less than 30 people, that's pretty meager, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. That's probably during that's the cut-off point.
I'm going to say it's 30. I haven't self-reflected.
No,
And I'm not sure I know 30 people, so that's a bit of a
no,
worry for me. But as you say, if it is me and there's only 12 people there, I'll be dead anyway, so it won't really matter, will it?
no. Well, on my list, I think I'd have a dry wake, so that sort out a few people that only come for the beer. There'd be none of that going on.
Yeah, well, I think most people would know that your wake would be dry, wouldn't they?
Probably, yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's like forewarned is forearmed, as it
yeah,
were.
yeah.
Um, no, but death plans, I'm a big fan of those. I think there's a lot of angst when someone dies, when relatives or whoever's left is trying to work out, well, what would they want? And if you've made it very clear what you want, then so much the better. And obviously, I know you'll want some Boston or Journey as you're going into the chapel.
Well, I want to make people cry. Yeah, I want to
Yeah,
make
and
them
then
weep.
perhaps some Christa Burr as you're on your way out.
Yeah, we've slagged him a lot recently. I think we should leave the lad alone.
Oh dear.
Yeah, because it's strange because after we've been talking about him, I think the next day I turned the radio on and a spaceman came traveling was on there by Christa Burr. And I
Yeah,
thought, wow.
that would be in a kind of conversation about favorite Christmas songs, wouldn't it?
Yeah, or least
Or
favorite.
least favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whichever way you want to put it.
Yeah, I can't stand that song.
But the only other day that came up, which was that I thought was quite funny. Well, not funny. It was National Checklist Day. No, it's having a checklist. Now, apparently, it came from the time when aviation was in its infancy and the pilots were taking off and constantly crashing, and that because they didn't they didn't have checklists, right? Because I related to this because my ex brother-in-law used to have his private pilot's license,
Mm,
and you have to maintain your license, you have to fly so many hours a year,
yeah.
and so to share the costs, I used to go up with him. I hated every minute of it, but I used to go up with him. But the checklist that he went through was extensive.
Was it what sort of propeller check?
You'd go, yeah, you'd go through all that. And
Engine check.
but he'd even touch the dials to make sure that that the glass on the dials weren't cracked and would
Oh,
give false readings. Yeah, when you
right.
were under different air pressure situations. So yeah, there's a great long checklist before you even sort of cantered along the runway.
So, I mean,
So,
the
so
National Checklist Day can't only involve people who fly aircraft, surely.
that's where it came from. That's
Oh,
where that was the roots
well,
of
what's
this
the nature
particular
of
day.
it now?
I don't know. I didn't really go beyond that. Really, it was
Do you
if
like
you,
a list?
I like a list, that's different from a checklist, really, because
Is it though?
a checklist is really pre-populated, isn't it? And then you check it off as you go through it, rather than
All right.
your own list you build yourself, don't you?
Yeah, but you still check things off, don't you,
You
on it?
do. I suppose you can check it off once you've created it, like you do perhaps at the supermarket. You've got a list, and as you go around,
Yeah.
just cross it through as you've done it, or mentally cross it through as
Yeah.
you've picked it out.
I'm a big fan of making a list at the end of the day after you've finished doing things, just writing down the things that you've actually done, because then
Absolutely.
it's guaranteed that you've completed everything on your list.
It is guaranteed, and you're building it from the bottom up. I think that's important. I mean, I think McKee work even said about that when you're trying to find meaning in your life and trying to even the smallest things, you should be patting yourself on your back for. And so
Yeah,
she said, rather than put a list and then put yourself under pressure trying to complete it, build it from the bottom up. Write down the things you have done. So
correct.
yeah, it's a good point.
And never have
But
more than 3 things on your list.
is that right?
That's my motto.
Is
Because
it
you can put, once you've done all 3, you can put another one on. But if you start
okay?
off with 20, it's
Ah,
like you're planning to fail already, aren't you? You're
it's
never
too
going to get through
daunting.
them all.
Too daunting. Yeah, that's a good tip. Just 3, right? Okay.
Just 3, yeah.
Right, on this day in music, um, talking of death,
Yeah.
as we were death list, in on this day in 2009, Forbes put out a list of what dead musicians earned in that year. Okay,
Wow.
so the ongoing royalties, etc. Now,
In
so
which year?
this was 2019.
Okay.
Okay, now
Michael
Wacko
Jackson.
Jacko, yes, he was top $60 million in that one year. No new material coming out.
Who got that then, I wonder? His estate, presumably.
I assume so. Yeah, yeah. It all goes to I'm sure that's all. It goes to his brothers or whatever.
Mm.
Elvis, $39 million. So he's
He's
still
doing
cracking on.
quite well. Even, what's that? 77 he died, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
87, 90. That's 45 years, 42 years.
Still
And he's
cracking on.
earned $39 million.
Yeah, not bad, is it?
That's what you call a passive income,
Yeah,
isn't
you
it?
write a few dodgy songs and away you go, son. There we are, set for
Or
life.
you'll be upsetting the Elvis fans there
Oh
with that.
no, I like Elvis. No, I
Mm.
do like Elvis. I think I'm a big. I've always been a big fan of Elvis. Everyone is, aren't they? Really?
I'm not bothered by him.
No, well, you wouldn't be, would you? It's a bit too popular.
Too popular. I like Elvis
Yeah.
Costello,
Yeah,
and I like Abbott and Costello as well.
Abbott and Costello. I wonder if they're getting still royalties on their. In probably their films are probably royalty free now,
Probably you can probably find them on
copyright free.
YouTube for nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last person on that, or the top 3, was John Lennon, which was he was right way down at 14 mil. So
Oh, that's not
yeah,
very good, is it? Oh, is that
no,
presumably, would that be just for his solo work then?
no, that's for
Oh,
his
Beatles as well.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Mm.
it might be for his solo. Because it was, I don't know. It
Was
didn't specify.
mm, okay. Barry Manilow not on there?
Well,
Is he dead actually? Is
I
he
don't know.
dead?
He's still alive, isn't he?
Is he?
I think so. Yeah.
What about the Bee Gees? Most of them are dead.
This is not an exhaustive list. I just took the top 3, mate. You know, I
David
could go on forever.
Cassidy, is he still
David
alive?
Cassidy. Oh, yeah, well, he died of his alcoholism. Yeah. Don't
Did
knock,
he?
don't knock the big C. Yeah.
Did he? He died.
Mm.
David Cassidy died. He was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. The documentary on him was really sad.
Oh,
Really sad.
I didn't know that. Well, I probably
Yeah.
did know that, but I'd forgotten that. I'm
Yeah.
surprised we haven't done an episode on David Cassidy,
There's an idea.
the Partridge Family.
The Partridge. Yeah. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that would be quite nostalgic, wouldn't it, really?
It'd be niche, though, wouldn't it?
It would be a little bit niche. But then again, I thought Tony Slattery was going to be a bit niche, and that was quite popular, wasn't it, as it turned out?
Well, we should do one on Tony Adams soon because, of course, he's a
Yeah.
national treasure now on Strictly. I know you love a bit of Strictly.
I've never actually watched it. Well, I know he's on it.
Mm.
I know he's on it, and he's doing all right, is
very well. Doing very well, yeah.
he? Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's yes, he's he uses his platform quite well to talk about his
dedicates
addiction issues.
his performances to the recovery community who he
Yeah. I like
says saved his life. But he hasn't, as I said before, he hasn't mentioned you personally.
Well, he should do. But I think I could let him off playing for Arsenal all those years then, because he's a recovering alcoholic with many years under his belt. So big thumbs up. So the only other thing that came up in this day in music, which I'm surprised that they put that on there, considering there's some quite high profile things going on. But on this day in 2004, the Motley Crue singer Vince Neil knocked a sound man unconscious. I mean, how did that get on the list? I mean, we should laugh really, because
did he do it deliberately or accidentally?
Yeah, no, he did it deliberately. He didn't turn his volume up on his guitar enough, apparently. So
Didn't he?
No.
I thought perhaps he hit him with his hair or something.
Well, not only that, it goes on to say that the chap was out for 45 seconds. Okay, now the fact they put such detail into the report, and who was timing him with the other band members around? They were like stopwatches, saying, "Well, see how Vince has got on this time. He's beat his record of 38 seconds or whatever." It's bizarre that would make the perhaps there wasn't much else going on.
Have you got any Motley Crue?
No, I don't think I have.
I've got a Motley Crue album. I think it's called Girls, Girls, Girls. It's pretty dreadful.
There was a documentary on Netflix about them. I can't remember what it was called. No, Dirty something, or anyway, which was very good. But they were like true rockers, weren't they? True rock and rollers. Everything to excess.
I expect they liked a bit of Jack Daniels, don't you?
Undoubtedly, yeah.
Yeah. Is he still alive?
Who, Jack Daniels?
No, Vince Neil.
Oh, Vince Neil, I think he is, yeah. But
it's always amazing when you hear about those kind of musicians that really lived very hard, and it's almost kind of surprising that they're still alive. I tell you, the person that is most surprising that is still alive is Shane MacGowan.
Yeah, I don't know how he's done that.
Yeah,
I really don't.
There you go. They're not good advertisements for sobriety, are they?
Not really, no. No, we should draw a discreet veil over them. But other high profile, like Ronnie Wood, he's in recovery. He's taken it on board and got himself sorted out.
I think Shane MacGowan is in recovery now. Actually, I read an article about him the other day.
I think
he's got an art exhibition, hasn't he?
Shane MacGowan, has he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think.
I know
so.
Ronnie Wood has.
I think Shane MacGowan has been. He's exhibiting some of his art.
He's turned his hand to the brush, has he? Well, that'd be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I thought you'd quite like that. Yeah. Anyway, there we are.
That's about it, mate.
Good. Well, I'm going to go out with the dogs then.
Good.
Do some self-reflection.
Take time to do that. I think Vince Neil should have done a bit of self-reflecting before he whacked his sound man, don't you?
I expect his sound man did a bit of self-reflection. Thought I ain't going to work for Vince Neil anymore.
Oh, we didn't used to whack each other, and we did used to do our own sound, didn't we? Anyway, when we were gigging,
we did. Yeah,
we had to knock ourselves out.
I don't think we ever knocked each other out for 45 seconds.
No, we didn't. I think I probably wanted to knock you out a couple of times. You turned your guitar up, but just a bit too loud.
I expect Paul Bradford probably wanted to knock me out a couple of times.
I think keeping you two apart was always quite tricky.
All right, I'll see you next time.
Take it easy, mate.
Laters.
Bye.
Bye. Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandy-wellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.